where's the first?
Because, like, this is the first game I'll actually be playing by myself, so I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm just going to be reacting to it once it happens. And so if something goes a way that either I didn't expect or I didn't want it to, I'm going to get really salty.
Yeah.
Especially since I'm not the best at predicting certain things. Granted, with, like, Danganronpa, there are certain things I'm able to predict. Like, literally, like, Jacob was trying... Because Monokuma, what he did was... In the beginning, he's just like, oh, the first murder that takes place will be free, and whoever does it won't have to experience a class trial, so they'll get to graduate automatically. And so... But Jacob's just kind of like... When I said, oh, but this doesn't make sense, what if... I literally called it, too. I'm just like, oh, well... Maybe if the murderer doesn't confess, then Monokuma will have to do a class trial. Jacob's like, no, there won't be a class trial because of the perk that Monokuma made up. And I'm just like, well, I'd still rather there be a class trial because that's what this whole game is about. You can't just get rid of those. And then then no one confessed, and Monokuma's just like, I see. So this is what the Black End wants. I will give them what they want. A class trial! And I'm just like, I just said that, Jacob, so shut up. And it was great. I was so happy. Finally called it for once. I was just like, that is exactly what happened. I knew it would, and it was the best thing ever.
Right.
And then in the chat, he's just like, ooh.
So, I guess I should start off with girl bodies. Do you want me to do full body or chibi first?
Chibi first.
Alright, so. For chibis, usually just start off with like a more oval head instead of a circular. Because it's a little more wider than it is longer. Then I'm not the best at doing like front-facing view chibis. I usually do 3/4 chibis, so it's like the cheek, the little cheek right there, and then the little chin, and then the guidelines would be, that would be the center line, and then the eyes would rest on top of this line, which is right where that indent above the cheek is. And then in terms of body, I guess for me, I just kind of eyeball it. But if you want to actually use proper measurements, I'd say that the body, so if this is like the length of the head, I would say the body is about twice the length of the head.
Okay.
So
I think it's finally catching up now. The stream was like lagging so hard.
yeah. So that's one length, and then oh, will it fit? It fits, it fits. So yeah, although you can usually experiment when it comes to like the size of the chibi body, but for me, what makes sense the most to me is having the chibi body 3 heads tall. And so how this would go would be, I still use like the rule that I have where the shoulders to the waist is the same length as from the waist to the knees and the knees to the feet.
Oh, I think I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah. So if you have these like guidelines down, then I would I don't know how to explain this. So I just kind of draw like a weird curved oval shape for like the top part, or I guess it's more of like a curved rectangular shape. Let's go with that, because I don't know, because you know me, I just kind of go off of instinct most of the time. So like this curve would be like the chest, and then this would be the shoulder, and then it would curve inwards, so this would be like the waist, and then this is the hips where it's the most widest, and then the hips should be about the same width as, or it should be slightly bigger than the shoulders, especially if you want your characters to be thick. And then I usually use like this curve to like indicate that's where like the leg goes into the hip, And then this is like the crotch, and then the other curve for the other leg, and then it connects back up. And then you kind of do like this teardrop shape for the thigh. So it's like big up here, big curve up here, and then it's a smaller curve down here for the knee. You do the same over here. And then you do another teardrop. And then you have a little big swell where the calf would be. So right here would be like a bigger swell. And then this part just kind of goes straight down. And then you just finish off the foot. Usually chibis don't have very detailed feet. And then you do the same thing over here. You have the swell of the calf, and then it smooths down to the bottom of the foot. And then you just draw down. And then for the arms, it'd still be the same as what I normally do. The elbow would be where the inner waist is, where that little indent is. So that would be where the first part of the arm ends, and then the second part of the arm, it's the same length as the first part. And then you draw the hand. And it's the same over here. Same length from the shoulder to the indent of the waist, and then the second part of the arm is the same length as this part of the arm. And I guess the hand would be like about half that size.
I remember me trying to follow that that kind of like process where I would draw like that kind of oval-esque shape. I don't even know what to call it, for the chest and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I guess, like with the way the shape looks, I guess, like it just never looked too right to me sometimes. Like, it still seemed pretty small, I guess, to me. That was my problem.
If the body is too small with digital, it's kind of an easier fix. You can just use the lasso tool, select the body, and then use the transform tool, and then you press and hold shift while you enlarge it, and then you can make the body bigger. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, whatever floats your boat. And I guess like a more simplified chibi way, like for quick sketches, you could just do like, or at least what I do when I'm just like freehanding it, is just kind of like start off with the same oval head, and then the cheek, and then for the neck, and then the body, I just kind of do like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like a potato. I don't know, you could do like a circle, and then the hip goes out, and this would be like kind of like a triangle within that circle. If you want to break it down into shapes, and then you just draw legs straight down. Yeah, this is just for like quick. I don't know, for me, when I draw hello? Well, there is some internet problems, and Haley went to get dinner, so I'm just going to continue the live stream, which is going to be awkward. Well, the head's too big here, so I'm going to select that and shrink it. I don't know, I guess one way to solve, not really solve, but like, I guess help prevent drawing too big of a head would be to draw the body first. So if you want, you can draw like the oval for the body first, however big you want the body to be. And then you draw out the hips, and then the indents for where the leg's going to be. Draw out the legs. You can usually eyeball how long you want the legs. With chibis, the proportions are a lot easier to mess around with. You can give them short, stubby legs, and it would still look okay. It wouldn't be preferred, but I guess if you want to do quick chibis, you can have the legs be a little longer than the shoulders to the hips. Or at least that's how I would like it, but some people do it where it's like the same length as from the shoulder to the hips. So if we can do that too. But make sure that like the feet are smaller than the top of the leg. And then you draw the arms. Make sure that if you want to eyeball the arms, they're not longer than half the leg. Like if they were to put the arms down, it would not go past this line. Then the little hands, and then the neck, then the head. You'd have to do kind of like a guess and check. There's not really any way to like draw the perfect sized head. It's just kind of something that you have to do a trial and error for. I think the head's too small. I drew the body a bit too high up. Some people do chibis with like really big heads, and I mean, like, if that's your style, then go for it. I personally think that there is a limit to how big the head can be for it to like still look okay. I'd say this is about a reasonable size. It's about the same size from here to here. Maybe a bit bigger because it's chibis. Don't make the neck too long, because then it'll just look like it'll just emphasize how big the head is. And in terms of eye spacings, the best way to go for eye spacings, especially with chibi, one thing that I would tend to run into was either drawing the eyes like way too big. So I draw them like this big. And I mean, like, that's okay if you want to draw your eyes really big. I personally think it's a bit extra. And especially if you practice realism a lot, then drawing big eyes just looks so unnatural to you. But by all means, go for it if you want to. Another thing to keep in mind is the spacing of the eyes. You can't put them too close. If they're too close, it won't look right. I mean, I guess since this is 3/4 view, since they're a bit closer, it'll look fine. So this is fine even though it's pretty close together. It still looks pretty fine, but some people will draw like eyes really close together. So it'd be like that, and then that just kind of looks wonky, because normally when you draw a face, I can't draw circles. That's a circle, right? So if you want to draw like a normal face, this is usually how I draw my chibis, like front view, which I don't like. I'm still working on it though. But when you draw it front view, this is the line of symmetry. This is where the top of the cheek is and where the eyes will rest on top. When you draw your eyes, usually the space in between the eyes is the same length as the eye itself. So this is one length, this is one length, and this is one length. It should be all the same length. You can mess around with it. Usually eyes closer together is a bit more of a... We associate that kind of trope with more dumb characters, I guess you'd have to say. That's kind of mean. I don't want to say that. But it's kind of true. It's like, because the eyes being closer together, it kind of shows, like, what's the word? Underdevelopment, I guess. But eyes too far apart just looks really wonky. Like, it's like eyes far apart looks more like an animal, like dogs, which is not what you want. So you want to have like an even thing. Usually how I think about it is like, if you just look at half the face, so if you didn't look at this part of the face, just look at this half, then the eye would go directly center between the outside of the head and the line of symmetry. So the eye would be like right in the middle. Then you draw the eye. And that's usually how I do my spacing. So right in the middle, then you draw the eye. I usually start off with the top curve. When I sketch, I don't put the bottom lash line. And yeah. And then there are some eye styles where in anime I often see like more rectangular eyes, where it's like the top of the lash line and the bottom of the lash line, and then the iris is just straight down lines. And I guess if you want to do that style, then that's okay. My personal preference isn't that. My personal preference is a more natural look where it's like the iris is an actual circle. And then you add little lashes. And another thing that people tend to have problems with is pupil sizing. Pupil sizing is kind of like the same idea with the spacing of the eyes, where it's like the pupil's right in the middle, and the length of, or at least for me, how I think about it is the width of the pupil is the same length on both sides of the pupil. If that makes any sense. Some people will draw smaller pupils. Whoops, wrong color. Some people will draw like tiny little dots, which, if you do that, it kind of makes the character look a bit more evil, because like an undilated eye will either be like either surprised or like mean or angry or something, and then like a bigger dilated pupil will be like more like cutesy or sad or something. I don't know. The shading helps too though. But a good in between is like what I do, where it's like right in the middle, where it's the same length from here and here. And yeah, some people don't even draw pupils, which is totally okay. Some people just kind of like shade it in, or some people will do like a very faint, where it's like an airbrush texture. So this is like the shading, and then this is the pupil. I've seen that become very popular lately. And then some people do like little cute designs, like they do like stars or hearts. That's cute too. So that's chibis. If you want to screenshot that or something, I don't know. And then with 3/4 views, it's okay to like kind of group the eyes a little closer together because you're kind of like foreshortening it. So this is kind of like the nose, so it cuts off that part of the eye, and you can draw it a little closer together. So when you draw a 3/4 view, you're kind of like covering up this part of the face. So it's fine to have it a little closer together. Alright, I guess I should just like leave that up there if you guys want that for reference. And then another thing that really bothers me when people draw chibis is that they'll draw the mouth like all the way up here, which is like really weird. If you want to draw the mouth, it should be like in between the chin and the nose, the halfway point. And like not over here. I mean, I guess if you want, if that looks nice to you, but it shouldn't be too far away from the symmetry line right here. If you want to incorporate a little bit of realism, because our mind recognizes realistic proportions, so that's what we kind of go off of. And if something doesn't look like the idealistic realism that we've seen in our lives, then it will look off and it'll look kind of weird. But there's like a fine line between stylistic choices and being unproportional. So that's chibis. Now I'm gonna try to do chibi boys. I'm not the best at male anatomy, I'm still learning myself. But it's kind of the same as girls, it's just more rectangular. So like with girls, it's more of like rounder shapes. Like these round shapes. Round shapes. And that's usually what distinguishes girls. And then with men, with boys, it's like you start off with a similar head. If you want, you can give them like the little chubby cheeks. Some people, when to distinguish their males more, they tend to not do chubby cheeks. I do chubby cheeks just because that's just how I am. But like some people will just like leave out the chubby cheeks and just have like a more defined jawline, which is another aspect of males, is that they tend to have a more defined jawline. And it's just like those little subtle things that can distinguish your males from females. And that head is massive. So with male anatomy, they will tend to have thicker necks. Although chibi, they always have tiny necks. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that you can play around with. It's more of like what suits your style more. If you want to do tiny necks, go for it. It'll just make them look slightly more feminine. Like ever so slightly. It's just like the little tiny differences that can distinguish it, especially when it comes to anime. Men, they tend to be more rectangular or triangular. So they have broader shoulders, more straight shoulders, so girls tend to have like curved shoulders like this, but men usually have like a little bit broader. But with chibi, it's hard to like do that without making it look weird. So what I do is like, I put out a little line, then I bring down, make them taper in a bit at the waist, or make them come in a bit at the waist. And then men don't have like curvy hips like girls, they just kind of go straight down. And then you have the indents for the legs. And then they also have straight legs. That's usually how I distinguish the differences between my male and female. And like, when it comes to measurement, it's basically the same. And you can play around with it, like some people will draw the guys' hips like really high. Although, I guess, anatomically speaking, or realistic anatomically what? I don't even know what I'm talking about. But like, some people can draw like the waist all the way up here, and then the hips go down here, and then the legs are like that. Those are crappy legs, but yeah. For me, it makes more sense in my head that their torsos are a tiny bit lower. So like this would be more like the rib cage. And then these are like the waist and hips. I actually kind of put the hips at the same level as the girls. They just don't have as much curves. And then the legs, which I try to not put too much definition in, or like not as much curves. So like these, you have like a curve, you have a curve and then a curve. Then for guys, I just kind of like do small, ever so slight curve. And then you have like the knee, so you kind of like curve in after the knee. And then you finish off the foot. And then you draw the arms, which are basically the same idea. The elbows are at the waist, and the arm, the second part of the arm is the same length. Although sometimes they might shorten the arm a bit, so that it doesn't go past the knee. So this is the knee line. The hand cannot go past the knee line, or else it just looks like you have noodle arms. It's got to be above that. And actually, his legs are too short. So I'd say that this measurement thing is a bit... It's harder to measure with heads. So, yeah. Men usually have longer legs because they're supposed to be taller than women. So, although girls can be tall. But yeah, guys tend to have longer legs. So, yep, there's your dude, I guess. Not the best at drawing guys. By all means, get like a male model or something. So yeah, that's kind of like my rule of thumb for guys. So it's a bit longer. And then I guess I should go into full bodies now. So full bodies, at least for anime full bodies, where it comes to anime proportions, where it like goes for the most ideal shape. And so that means like for girls that'd mean like nice curves, tall, long legs, that sort of thing. And then for girls, it's not like realistic proportions. They kind of like try to optimize the cutesiness of the body. So that means optimizing curves and kind of like the pear shape where it's like small shoulders and big waist, kind of. If you know what a pear looks like. I don't eat pears. There. Now it's a knockoff of the Apple logo. Whew. Hopefully I don't get copyrighted. I'm kidding. So with girls, if you're a beginner at this, you want to start off with the head. Yeah, obviously. That has a really good starting point, especially for measurement. So you usually base off the measurement of your body based off the head. So if this is the head, if this is the length of the head, what I used to do would be, I would draw the measurement out before the body. So this is 1. I usually do 7 heads, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I do have a simpler way of thinking about it, but this is kind of like how I used to think about it, and it's really good to start thinking logically when it comes to measurements of the body so that it doesn't throw you off too much. So this is the length of the head. Do we do 7? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do 7. So the head, the neck, just a little bit. Don't make the neck too long or too short. The shoulders, I kind of do like the same. I do a weird shape when it comes to the top, and it's usually one of those make or break moments. So since we're doing 3/4 view, it kind of shows off the bust more, which is what I like to do. So this is like where the shoulder socket would be, and then it goes inwards towards the inner waist. And then for here, the shoulder socket would be right here, but the chest is right here, so that kind of curves out in front of it. And chests do not go like this. Like that's a no. It's like a nice, think of it as like a teardrop. So if you were to draw like a teardrop like that, and then erase half of it, that's a little bit more of a suitable breast size or breast curve. And then from this curve you just go like a diagonal line inwards, because the only way that it would actually go into this curve, like that part, would be if you're wearing like a form-fitted bodysuit, which is not right. So you'd really do this unless you're doing like, you'd really do like this inward curve unless you're doing like nude modeling, or if you want to draw your clothes really unnaturally where it shows that kind of boob curvage. But most clothing don't do that. Most clothing just like stop at the top of at the highest point of the boob, and then it goes downwards. So you usually don't even need this curve. And like some people will do a boob line like right here, which again, that's not natural. That's not how boobs work. Like that's not how clothing works in terms of boobs. Unless you're drawing like a bikini, then maybe that would work, or a bra or something, then yeah, sure. But when it comes to clothes, it just goes, it hangs off the highest point of the boob and then it goes downwards. So the most boob line you get is that when it comes to clothing. So I usually use round shapes, kind of close it off here. The boob is usually like right under the second head measurement, so this is the bottom of the boob. And then I usually make the biggest part of the waist, it should be a bit wider, or at least how I do it, it's wider than the shoulders ever so slightly, and it's just below the third mark, or the third head. And then you do the little indents for where the thighs are going to be. Then this is where the crotch is, and that's where the other thigh is. So, and then you kind of like, I guess if you want to, like this is where the hip bones are, but I just kind of go straight into the thighs. And the thighs should be, the first thigh should be the same length from the shoulder to the hip. So that's about 1.5 heads, maybe 2. I usually do 2. So that's about around this mark. Same with the other thigh. And then this thigh is behind. See, like this thigh would be behind this thigh, so you wouldn't see this part of the thigh. And then you finish off the leg, the bottom, the calf. There's like a bigger swell at the top right here, and then it curves down. So it's like that. So it's like that, and there. It's like a big bump, and it goes down. And then from the knee, it kind of curves in a little bit, just to like get the definition of that knee. And then it goes straight down. And that's where you finish that first part of the leg off. And it's the same thing on the other side. And then you draw the feet. So this is the heel. And then the flat part of the foot. And then you draw kind of like a sloping downwards motion. And you finish off the toe. Same over here. And then the legs are, this is actually a pretty short character in terms of what I normally do. And then the arms, same thing, where it's like the elbow is at the smallest part of the torso, or where the waist is. And then the second part of the arm is the same length as the first part, and then you draw the hand, which should be about half the size of the arm. And if your hands go past the knee line, then you are too long of the legs. So this is how I used to do things, a lot more technical. Now, since like I'm a little more experienced and I eyeball things, I kind of just do the head. And then sometimes, if say like this pose is very stiff. For me, if I try doing this first and then the pose looks very stiff, I do gesture lines. I usually recommend doing gesture lines first. Gesture lines are like drawing out kind of like the curve of the spine. So good posture is like a bit of a bend in the back of the spine. And the shoulders are down here, they're not too high and stiff. And then the waist, it's wider than the shoulders, at least how I do them. And then there's usually one leg that takes on most of the weight. I usually, especially if like you do like a weird hip movement, like one hip is higher than the other, then usually the higher one is the one that the person is leaning on, so that means that this leg is going to go back a bit to match up with the line of symmetry. So this is the line of symmetry. So this is the line of symmetry. This is the knee. And then how I measure things when I eyeball it is the shoulders to the hips is the same length from the hips to the knee, or to the bottom of the knee, and then from the knee to the bottom of the foot. Or actually no, usually the ankle. And then I add the foot on. So with this line of symmetry, since usually the base of the neck goes with the line of symmetry, base of the hips, and since they're kind of leaning on this hip more, this hip has most of the body weight because it's most of the body is on this side of the symmetry line. It'd be on this hip. And then you'd have to line up the bottom of the foot with this line of symmetry. So right there. And then with this leg, you can like either have it bend in a bit, and since this hip is lower than this hip, the knee will be lower than this knee. You can have it bend in and have like the foot over here, or you can have it straight out with the leg over here. And then like the foot's maybe going this way, and this foot's going that way. So if we do it this way, you draw the neck down, then you kind of, it's going more in like a diagonal than like a straight shoulder like that. It's a diagonal from the neck and it slopes down to the shoulders. Same over here. Then you do like the teardrop curve of the boob, but you only draw half of it. And you draw inwards. So this would be the rib cage. This would be the back of the shoulder into the rib cage. And then you draw from right here outwards for the hips, out here outwards for the hips, and then the indent for the leg, the crotch, then the other thigh. Then you draw the thigh where it's thick at the top and then it shrinks down towards the knee. It's like a weird oval thing. It's too thick. She's too thick, guys. Another thing I like to do with like the hip is kind of have like a bit of a curve, especially if the leg is like out like this. It has a bit of a curve where it curves in at the butt, at the bottom of the butt, and then it goes to the and transforms into the thigh. Then over here you have the thigh, and you just kind of like draw diagonal curved lines towards the knee. And then the knee kind of pops out a bit. Actually, for this part, the knee is facing this way. So, kind of pops out a bit. And then draw the calf. I usually start the calf a little bit above where the knee circle is. And then you have the bump of the calf. And then you bring it down towards the ankle. Then this is the heel. And over here, you go from the bottom of the knee, just go straight down towards the ankle, and then you slope down to the top of the foot. Then you round it off. And over here, the knee is right here. The knee pops out a little bit. Then you draw a straight line down from the knee. A bit of it like an inwards curve, but not too much where it looks like crow's feet. Or whatever. Crow's legs? I don't know what it's called. And then you go towards the ankle, and then for here you start a little bit above the knee for the calf. And the calf goes out, and then inwards towards the heel. And then you put the foot down, curve from the top of the foot, and close it off. And then this is the big toe, so it'd be farther out than the small toe. Even then, the pose kind of looks a bit weird. I think it's mostly the feet. It's probably this leg. I'm gonna change this leg. That looks gross. Ooh. It's the feet, yeah. So I'm just gonna have it more on like a flat instead of a diagonal. And then the leg comes out. I'm gonna have it bend in a bit below that knee, then out. There's a heel, and the foot's gonna go like that. So curve And then this top of the thigh goes in front of this thigh. Curve that in to the ankle. Take the curve of the calf. Then the heel, ball of the foot to the toe, curve the toe, and then the toes. Or curve of the foot and then the toe. And the arms, same thing. You start from the shoulder socket and then you go down towards the smallest part of the torso. And that's where the elbow is. And then the other arm is the same length as this. And then the hand, which should be about half of the arm. So, yeah, that's usually how I do females. I tend to make the legs a little bit longer. So if I were to just do like a really quick eyeball sketching without like any guidelines or anything like that, this is how I would do it. Oh no, froze. Ugh. Is it because of this? I think it's because of that, yeah. And that's how I usually eyeball it. And the best advice I can say for eyeballing proportions and doing a quick body sketch would be remembering that the shoulders to the waist is the same length as the waist to the bottom of the knee, and then the bottom of the knee to the ankle. And that the head usually is about half of the body, or I should say the torso is twice the length of the head. And yeah, these are really messy. Remember, if you're doing traditional and you're doing a body base, draw very lightly so that it's easy to erase when you draw on top of the body base. That's always a really big problem, and that usually when it comes to pencil pressure, the best way to have a light grit or like a light pressure is if you hold, like if this is the pencil, is if you hold in the center instead of like up here. Up here would be like harder pressing, and then like here you have, not only will you have like more fluid curves, you would have more fluid curves compared to here. You can have like longer fluid curves if you hold it in the middle of the brush or the pencil compared to like all the way at the tip right here, and then you just have like tiny little strokes, and it'd be really thick and dark lines that are harder to erase. Now let's move on to full body males. Kind of the same concept as the chibis. You start off with the head, they tend to have a more defined jawline, so it's like that, a more angular and less puffy cheeks, and a longer head. The neck is a lot thicker. It starts from the jawline. And then the shoulders are a lot wider. Let me draw out the head measurements. Usually a good way to cheat it is if you want your males to be taller than your females, you give them an extra head in terms of length. So the girl I originally did 7, so I'll give this guy 8. If I can fit it. Probably can't. 6, 7, 8. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. So for how I draw males, I usually use more angular box-like shapes. So the top of them is kind of like a triangle, I guess, where you curve it at the rib cage. This is the rib cage. This is the back of the shoulder. Curves in. It's about the same height as their head. And then just kind of like bowl, I guess. Instead of like curving outwards like a female, you would just take it from here, go down. This would be like their waist part, and then their hips would just be like this triangle. You can choose if you want. Usually with buffer guys, they tend to have more broader shoulders. But yeah, they're pretty straight. Straight, except for most boys. Then the legs would be longer because it's the same length as this. So the bottom of the knee. I'm not even using like this head measurement because fuck that. Just kind of. Then the calf. But yeah, they tend to be very straight, not as much curves. Because curves would indicate a more feminine body, and they tend to have lower crotches. It's so weird saying that word. And their feet tend to be longer. This pose looks very stiff though. That's okay, except not really. I'm just being lazy, guys. Oh, that hurts. Yeah, now I'm gonna redo that. That looks really dumb. It's so hard to get like a good pose that isn't stiff, especially for males. But you should at least keep in mind like these types of shapes. Like this is more of like a triangle, and then you go from the armpit, kind of curve in, just ever so slightly, and then you should get a different color. Start off with like this triangle shape, and then curve in ever so slightly, then go down, curve slightly a bit out for the hips, just a little bit. I don't know, man. It's hard kind of explaining my process since I've been drawing so long. You just kind of get used to it. But yeah, gesture lines always help make the poses look a little less stiff. a little triangle, or I guess like part of a triangle, and then just gonna go straight down. Crotch is down here, and the leg. And men tend to not have thigh gaps. Their calves are defined though, so I guess that's the thing. Men can have womanly calves. Calves? Clavs? What? If you want a good guideline for finding out how long to draw the feet, usually the length of the foot is the size of the forearm, and so also the elbows are a bit tricky in this one. The elbows would go right above this waistline. It's not like in here, which is where the girls would be, but it's like right above there, since the men's torso is a bit longer. And this is like late teen, early adult body, I guess. If you want to draw more a teenager body structure for males, they would have a slightly smaller shoulder, like less broad shoulders. If you want to do a nice teenage boy, then it'd just be more of like a triangle, or not a triangle, rectangle, instead of like a triangle with a rectangle. But the older they are, they tend to have a little more broader shoulders. And men also tend to have big hands, you know, the meowy hands, but not too big where the fingers go like past the knee, and that's a big no-no. Let's just say this. And when I say forearm, I mean like from the bottom of the elbow to the bottom of the paw, or paw? What? Palm. I've been hanging around cats too long. So this length should be about the same length as this. And then still though, like the shoulders and the waist should be the same size to the bottom of the knee and to the knee to the ankle. The only difference, or I guess the only difference besides shape, in terms of measurement between the male and the female is that the female's crotch would be like a little higher, like right here. And yes, it does make a difference. The men's crotches would be a bit lower. And yeah. And they would probably have longer legs because of that. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of explaining basic anatomy, at least how I think about it. Hopefully it wasn't too complicated. Look back on this video if you ever need references for bodies. You can even just like screenshot these and like use it as reference. This is the female. Her legs look a bit short, at least in my opinion.